Penguin Random House Audio presents Your Favorite Scary Movie, How the Scream Films Rewrote the Rules of Horror by Ashley Cullins. Read for you by Roger L. Jackson, with the introduction read by the author. For my husband and sons, who make me laugh every day no matter how stressed or sleep-deprived I am. You are pure love in human form, and I am the luckiest. Introduction. Scream was my first favorite movie. I was 12 when it came out, and I watched my VHS copy so many times I had nearly every line of dialogue memorized. It terrified me, but while it caused a lifelong fear of landlines and remote wooded neighborhoods, it also sparked an appreciation for dark humor and creative storytelling. About a year into working on this book, Kevin Williamson and I were talking about what I might write next, and he asked me what my favorite movie of all time is. It's a simple enough question, but I didn't have an answer. I still don't. There are a lot of movies I love that have been favorites at certain points in my life, but nothing that's left a lasting mark the way Scream has. Halloween was one of the first films that made Williamson fall in love with movies, and it's still his favorite, so he gets it. It always goes back to movies from my childhood. Those are the ones that speak to me because they have stuck with me for years and years and years. And you're always trying to recreate that magic. Not recreate those movies, but recreate the way you felt when you saw those movies, Williamson says. I want to do that. I'm always trying to recreate those feelings for the audience. In the world of streaming, it's really difficult to make a lasting impact. That's what I love about Scream. It started before all that, and it's still making an impact. Wes Craven played no small part in that. He was fascinated with psychology, and his understanding of the human condition is why he was a brilliant director, and why Scream is such an effective movie. Wes always felt that fear and horror were rites of passage, explains Patrick Lussier, who edited the first 3 Scream films. I recall him saying that the reason horror movies often had younger protagonists and played so well to younger audiences was that they were about people caught in the moments between childhood and adulthood. The fear they survived was a primal right, the act of blooding, to prove that you were no longer innocent, but a survivor. The act of going to a horror movie to be part of a communal experience that terrifies is really about the moments after the scares. There's often a laugh, a shared feeling of catharsis, where we can wordlessly acknowledge that we survived intact, whether the characters on screen did or didn't. We did. Wes thought the audience comes back to the genre over and over because they get to survive. They get the cathartic release of facing absolute terror and coming out on the other side unscathed. I describe Craven's pathos to John Carpenter, the idea that audiences like horror because it creates a sense that you can survive scary things in the real world, and I ask if he thinks it's true. I don't know, but I like it, he says, pausing for a moment. It's probably a catharsis. Isn't that what the Greeks talk about? It's all about catharsis. You project into the screen, into the characters. Yeah, I think it's true. I really do. Then he turns it around on me. Now, let me ask you a question. You loved Scream as a teenager, right? Why? It takes me a second. Partially because no one has ever asked me that so bluntly, but mostly because I don't want to come off like an idiot to John Carpenter. As if that ship hadn't already sailed when I told him that before our Zoom, I rewatched Halloween in broad daylight because I was by myself and have an overactive imagination. I I start with the easiest answer. I've always been good at solving whodunits, but Scream surprised me. Then I get a little more honest. When Ghostface killed Casey Becker, it was shocking, not just surprising. And it tapped into the fear of being a teenage girl home alone. Because you're not afraid of being alone, right? You're afraid you're not alone. If you're alone, nothing can happen to you. If there is another person who wishes you harm, that's truly scary. Especially when it's someone you know and trust. It honestly probably would have been too much for me, I tell him. Except that it was funny, too. Scream wasn't just trying to scare you. It was also trying to make you laugh. That's where Carpenter stops me. See, you don't need me. I'm serious. Put that into the book. Put your soul in there. Put what you love about it in there. And it'll show. Everybody will dig it.
Chapter 1. Rewriting Horror. Scream is a love letter to scary movies, written by a disenchanted admirer who knew that the genre wasn't living up to its potential. Seeing Halloween as a kid was a defining moment for Kevin Williamson. So when he made it to Hollywood, he took horror into his own hands. Determined to recreate that feeling, Williamson poured his frustration and passion onto the page. The result was not just a great slasher, but something truly iconic. Scream not only changed his life and career, but altered the trajectory of the horror genre. In retrospect, it's hard to imagine that anyone was surprised by its impact. But the movie that is now a global phenomenon and has sparked a billion-dollar franchise started as a low-budget project from a fledgling studio that was written by a novice and starred a mostly unknown cast, and no one who was involved, even the most optimistic among them, had any idea they were about to become part of the zeitgeist. Least of all Williamson, who was a struggling screenwriter back in 1995. He'd already sold a script, sure, but it was languishing in development hell, and he was broke. I had sold Killing Mrs. Tingle to Interscope with Joe Dante attached to direct, recalls Williamson, who took a job as a personal assistant to a director to make ends meet. It was a very, very little option. I think it was $75,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but I was about $100,000 in debt. It was so sad because I thought I had made it, and no, I had not made it. I was in West Hollywood in a rent-controlled apartment for $650 a month, and it got hard to pay that bill, believe it or not. Determined to make it as a writer, Williamson went back to the drawing board. I was trying to come up with another movie to write because Tingle wasn't getting made, he says. No one was making good horror movies, so I wrote the movie I wanted to see. That movie was Scream, an unexpected and updated take on slasher flicks that simultaneously celebrated and satirized the films that came before it. How Williamson wrote the genre-bending film has become lore over the decades. As the story goes, he holed up in a condo in Palm Springs and hammered out the screenplay in just 3 days. That's sort of an urban legend at this point, but yeah, it's true, Williamson says, before clarifying, I wrote an outline first, though. The genesis of the story dates back even further. A lifelong horror fan, Williamson had become hooked on storytelling as a kid, thanks to his mother's Doubleday book club copy of Peter Benchley's Jaws, which was confiscated by a teacher in elementary school who thought it wasn't age-appropriate. He stood in line for 4 hours at a small-town Texas movie theater when Steven Spielberg's movie adaptation first came out, but it was a full house and he was turned away. The next day he went back and waited even longer. I got in, and I was in the front row, Williamson says. I just loved the adrenaline and the way everyone
Sample complete. Ready to continue?